The confession to Tony was, oh, he said, hire and fire based on the culture that you want to create. I heard that. Hire and fire based on the culture you want to create. Heard that. He said it a third time, hire and fire based on the culture you want to create. So this is 3 years in, I've heard it. The fourth year in, I hear him complete his sentence. He said it every time. I got it in recordings. It's on the DVD, but I didn't register it. Hire and fire based on the culture you want to create, regardless of performance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to do a little come to Jesus and take some inventory on the staff members that I had that like they're just a little off, like like a 10-degree adjustment out of culture. A day, a week, you don't feel it, but you go out a year, oh, what's going on here? In my case, 7 years later, I was on a completely different planet with some of my top producers. Like, this is not what we want to create. This is not where we're going. This is not what we're made of. This is, and that's the hardest, is to let go of your moneymaker.
Yeah.
Right. It's the hard. So I just had to raise my hand and be like, hey, I just want to identify this now. This is not a small thing. So, yeah, regardless of how his life ended, I'm not going to forget the virtues he represented when he was doing his finest work. So
The other guy you had there who really made an impression was I think it was Stephen Covey's son, or the one, the
it's
Speed of Trust.
author of Speed of Trust is Stephen M.R. Covey. It was Stephen Covey's son. Yeah. Um,
I mean, it's kind of funny, after all these years, there are just certain people you really remember
that
and the
guy.
point they
I mean,
made.
so I called him to see, like, hey, are you helping businesses? Do we need to bolt on a business coaching unit to what you're doing? Because I'm always looking for strategic partners so we bolt on our coaching. So great authors and speakers out there, but doesn't mean they have a way to help entrepreneurs implement the proven strategies in their books. And he was like, no, he's like, if I remember this correctly, he had visited, it was a ridiculously large number of institutions, federal penitentiary, prisons. He's just
Yeah.
going in prisons left and right. So it was, he just found this space in his life to where he was focused on just pure contribution to humanity. And he wanted to
Hmm.
take some of the most vulnerable human beings and not forget about them, and not forget about, what would you do when someone's knocked down? Do you turn your back on them and just leave? Or do you lend a hand? And he's spending all this time with his great skill. And I naively at that moment was like, but we could be doing so much with these entrepreneurs, these business owners, these great CEOs. Your work is so profound. And you're absolutely right. It sticks with me because the virtues that man has and how he's committed his life to serving of others. I didn't forget that. And I was like, okay, yeah. I, ca- I get, if I didn't acknowledge it then, I am acknowledging it now.
Yeah.
That was very admirable. And I remember to this day, yeah, really good guy. Quote him all the time. With people, slow is fast. That's what I remember he shared. Like, you know, like, and KPIs were so quick to identify. And I train on transparently communicating people's actual outcomes to KPIs. I believe transparency is essential because I don't think there's such a thing as like like, I don't think you could hide and get away with stuff, Rod. Like, just social media, like, you can't even do it if you wanted to. You'll be outed somewhere. Somewhere someone's going to find out what the real outcome was anyhow eventually. So I love the transparency of it. But when there's an HR component, like an issue coming up, like if their KPIs drop, sometimes that's a cry for help. Like, what's going on at home? And you don't workshop a person. Like, I train on workshops, but you don't workshop a person. A person slow is fast. Go take the lunch. Slow
Yeah.
down. Don't say as much. Say, a lot less. Definitely use the two ears, one mouth rule, and take your time. Slow is fast. And yeah, I quote him often. Wasn't he brilliant? Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know where he's at and what he's doing, but speed of trust. I quote it daily.
well, and it just totally makes sense no matter what business you're in. Is that you know, well, I've even told people one of the main times I'll get very cautious about dealing with someone as soon as they start telling me, trust me.
Oh,
That's like a that's like a
yeah.
oops, hang
Well,
on.
yeah, the trust me is in like maybe I shouldn't.
Well, if you have to tell me to trust
Honestly,
you,
hey, let me be honest.
yeah,
Okay, so does that mean you've not been on it? Like,
yeah, or like I'm not buying here,
yeah,
or no,
I'm
it's like,
not.
hmm,
Yeah,
I hadn't
impeccable
got
with
to
your
that
word. Like,
conclusion.
step up your language, your quality of communication, be more impeccable. Now, I'll tell you, Rod, in full transparency, I've struggled with the being impeccable with my word because of my love of sarcasm.
Oh,
I think sarcasm is for highly intelligent people. And then if you just take that and ever bring it to a party, uh, it, the quality of communication takes two, right? And
yeah,
not everyone's from Chicago or Bostonians. I find Bostonians love my Chicago Teddy sarcasm. They're like better at it than I am. Like something's in Boston. If you're a Bostonian, you're just dripping with sarcasm and could appreciate it, but others just don't. And
so I lucked out when I was a senior in high school. Like I said, if you're pretty quick mentally, you can really nail the sarcasm.
yeah,
And a lot of times you can nail people and they don't know they got nailed. And I went out with this one girl about 3 times, and she's probably behind the majority of the money I've earned. And this was in 12th grade, okay? She looked at me and she goes, "Who do you think you are to be the cloud on anybody's horizon?" And she just ripped into me for being sarcastic. And
mm,
luckily, I didn't get defensive. I thought it through.
smart.
And by the time I got to college, it was like if I would catch myself and go, "Nope, I'm not going to be the cloud on your horizon. I'll be the sunshine."
Yeah, it's
And
said well.
it's made me so much more money.
Really, really, very stoic of you. I was listening to the something that was just their interpretation of meditations from and their perspective of stoicism. And yeah, it's a very stoic thing to do, and it's by far definitely an area that I struggle with because I know words, they only care the meaning people give them. Yet if you take a role as a leader, you choose that role, then you're thinking through how will my audience or the majority of my audience receive that. And then the worst is if you take 100% accountability to how they all are going to receive it. Because now I'm like, well, I'm not going to be worrying about what other people think, to the point that now you're just doing all this politically correct danceness. Like we can't
Yeah.
be polarizing enough to make affect change. Like if I want to be able to get people to that place that what's that called? It's a word for a door jam, like a door jam, like an entrance. It's liminal. It's like an archway. It's like a moment before a breakthrough. There's an author of liminal thinking. To get someone there, sometimes that takes effort. Yet to be impeccable with the word, that's like earlier I mentioned at that venue, Gary Vaynerchuk, no one knew who he was. That was before he just wrote his book there. I mean, he had a big following on Twitter, but he wasn't like he was now. And same thing with
Oh,
Tony. They loved F-bomb. And
oh, he used them like commas in a sentence.
yeah, very much so.
Oh,
Yeah. And I did I ever tell you about my concern? Did I ever tell you how I was humbled to recognize that Tony Robbins was very much my senior partner when I thought I'd share my opinion about Gary Vaynerchuk? Did I ever tell you that?
uh-uh.
So Gary V. So I don't think I've had a chance to acknowledge him for this yet. I don't know if I've had a chance to tell him this in person. He was in an event I was speaking at, and I wanted to tell him. I don't know if I had. So it went like this. Because he f bombs like crazy. Because I'm
Oh
looking at
boy,
who's
does
going to
he?
be there. Scott Demolin deserves credit for like 50% of the people that spoke at that venue. But Scott didn't place that guy. Tony placed that guy. And I checked that out. I'm like, oh no. I was like, hold up, hold up. Like I think, I'm just gonna just correct Tony here. I'm like, listen, man, I appreciate your walk on fire shit, bro. I've walked on fire with you a dozen times. I'm liking that. I get it, but you got to understand these business owners. I'm just basically like tiptoeing around, and they kind of asked me for a little bit poignant of a response. I was like, listen, he drops the F-bomb like crazy, and you do that already enough. Like, we got one of you. I don't know if we can handle two of you. And I think that's just going to blow him out of the water. So I was dead wrong. Like, everyone got his intent beyond his F-bombs.
Yeah, I enjoy him. I just,
I
I
thought,
guess
well, I was
this
afraid
is
that my audience, I was afraid, I say my audience, it wasn't just me. I mean, Chet had very much a bigger name to that. It was Tony Robbins, Chet Holmes, were the two faces of that brand we'd yet to
right.
develop and called Business Breakthroughs International eventually. But, it's just my life at that time is me, Chet, and a personal assistant that started this deal, and Doug Wilder. And so I thought I was going to shut him down and stop Gary Vaynerchuk from going to the venue. I was dead wrong, and now I eat crow because he's been able to consistently, even though he's got a lot of color, he leads with a degree of empathy that I think allows people to find that being palatable. When you posture up with language like the F bomb, but he's willing to posture down, which means go to inferior posturing by being vulnerable with his empathy. That's what makes him palatable. People
Yeah.
that come across that, you know, like there are others in this space that they posture up of significance and they stay in that posture. I'm great, I'm awesomeness, I'm the bestest, you wish you had my money kind of energy, and they stay there. It becomes you judge them. But if you can find a human being that's moving from a peer position to a superior position to inferior position quickly and effortlessly, they have the greatest ability to influence you. So I tip
Well,
my hat to Gary.
and a guy like him, I'm trying to remember. As I recall, he isn't afraid to pull out a little self-deprecation.
No, not at all. Like,
And
he'll talk, and I like that he doesn't what do you call it when you don't candy coat a thing, like to the point, like just talking about eating crow, like being more transparent about like how we've all ate crow before we got to where anyone was talking good about us, right? It was like when we were talking bad about ourselves to ourselves because we're doing the grind, right? And we were putting in the
yeah.
work, we weren't that bad. And then because of that, we realize we're not as good as everyone pretends that we are once we made it, like, which comes in an instant, but no one just sees the 10 years of the grind, right? He's been consistently transparent about it,
Well,
um,
it's kind of like my company. After 10 years, we became an overnight success.
yeah, that's everyone's story. I haven't, I don't meet often the person that is the literal overnight success, because I don't think they're usually coming to an environment where you're being forged to master your skills. Whereas
Well,
mastery is at
there
the
is one of
middle point.
those. Now
Is that?
that FTX kid, he was kind of an overnight success and kind of an overnight flame out.
I don't know. Is that the one that's
The cryptocurrency that bottomed out.
oh so yeah, so I'm so ignorant of what happened there. I
That's
didn't understand that it
billions of
bottomed out. I
dollars
thought
just
it was a
gone.
little bit more malicious, as in like,
Well, he absconded with $1
fraudulent.
billion.
What's that?
He absconded with $1 billion of his clients' money. He moved it
Yeah, so that's
around.
malicious then. Yeah. So okay,
Yeah.
from what I heard, again, because that wasn't really paying attention to it.
Well, I'll give credit that a Ponzi scheme will make you a lot of money. Might not make for a clear conscience, but you
Yeah,
definitely don't want to be the last guy in the line in a Ponzi scheme.
yeah, and I don't think I even want to be the first. You know,
No,
I spend I try not to spend a lot of time talking about the things I can't control
nope, you really can't.
like that. I try and I see it as another way. I was telling to a dear friend of mine, he's a doctor and he's frustrated about some of the things going on in the space in the last few years. And it's like medicine suddenly got politicized in some way, shape, or form. He's very frustrated. And I was just saying, hey man, watch like giving the energy to that. I was like, when you see that malicious energy, if you even acknowledge it, you're empowering it. So
Well, and
like,
also you beat yourself down if you aren't careful.
well, I mean, you could, you know, in his case, like, because he's taken an oath and he sees people not taking an oath. So I'm like, and I was being clear. I was like, just, you know, going back to that stoic language, like, um, in stoicism, you would seek justice for people that did not follow that oath. Yet it doesn't mean you even have to judge that person who's yet to express your virtues. Like they're on their own journey and they're doing something malicious for whatever reason. But just because if you see someone doing something shady, you don't even necessarily even have to judge it. It's not your, especially if you can't control it, because all that does is allow you to spin out into drama and you start thinking through things that never have occurred. You take fear, or you call it typically something like worry, and then you in your mind's eye project things that never even really happened. And so that is like choosing to allow yourself to be like self-abusive. Like it's like like it's agonizing. Like why would you choose agony when you have absolutely nothing to do with it? So it's like, don't be for it, but don't even be against it. How about just be completely not emotive? And if it comes by your way, just be observant of it, but like don't even engage with it. Just completely let it go before it's ever sunk its teeth into you. Otherwise, you know, you become a part of manifesting more of it because whatever resists persists. So, you know, one fun way to consider approaching things that you cannot control is to not engage with it.
Well,
Simply don't
and
engage.
now, did you ever have to study poetry like in college?
No, no, no,
Okay,
no, no. That was I
'cause
went to
I
school
was a
engineer. It was all math, and the arts were just like no, I just didn't get any of that. Not that Purdue University didn't have any of it. It just I missed all that, and I wish
in
I would
my
have been deeper into it.
I lucked out. My degree was in technical journalism, and I picked it because
Oh,
I could
great.
take virtually anything under the sun. It all counted toward my degree. And communications was really easy, so I could just nail it and I could enjoy myself.
You probably
And
read Nietzsche and understand what he's saying. Man, it's just a mother fudger for me right now. Like it's like work to read. Like I'm gonna do it because I want to read more. But I got his actual. I didn't get someone's interpretation, just his books,
well,
and
the one
whew,
I was going to mention to you
heavy.
though, have you ever heard the name Robert Burns?
Robert Burns,
Yeah,
the poet Burns.
yeah, the poet Robert
Yeah.
Burns. Scotland. His most famous work, you'll be humming it at the end of the year. You've heard Old Lang Syne.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably his second most famous, and you probably use this phrase from it about the best laid plans of mice and men
Uh-huh.
oftentimes go
Uh-huh.
awry.
Yeah.
That's Robert Burns from Ode to a Mouse. And the reason and this will make sense, I think, when I get there for you. He goes through, he's plowing a field, it's in the fall, he turns over a mouse's nest, and he's apologizing to the mouse and acknowledging that you've been building your nest, you're getting ready for winter, and I just turned it upside down, and now you're in a pickle. You're in a bit of a
Mm,
problem. He's talking to the mouse.
yeah.
And then at the end, though, he goes, "But I appreciate you. I envy you because you only have to deal with today's problems." He said, "I look forward in fear and backwards in remorse."
Hmm.
And that's exactly what you're saying, in effect, about worry.
Yeah.
Is like you're sitting here worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. You're looking forward in fear, and chances are you're looking backwards with remorse. Why didn't I do whatever? And the mouse is lucky; he just deals with today, and you just turned over my house.
I'd say we can all be lucky. because we have the power within us to choose to be present and focus on the moment. But that's harder to do, especially when it's polarizing topics, especially when it hits home
Yeah,
and you're like, and business owners, they've got this all day because they're calling them their family more than they have ever called them anymore. Their employees, their team. Um, I'm a fan of the team thing. I don't. It's not my hill to die on. It just I know my family's my blood. But you, there is no undoing that. But you can fire an employee. So blood's thicker than water, So I come from that, and I'm like, don't pretend that they're blood when it's not, because you're
yeah.
gonna end up firing someone at some point.
Well, and
You
even with
don't
your
you
own
don't fire your
family.
uncle. Does that make sense? Like he'll always be your uncle.
Well, the relationships in the blood, the fellowship can sure get screwed up.
Yeah, and so it's so the business owner hears, like, because the heart of business, like that's what I'm trying to get to, is the heart of the matter is that CEO sits in the middle, not at the top, but sits in the middle. And a CEO that's got a great degree of sensory acuity, they're picking up what's going on in the ecology they call their business, and they go, okay, they can start picking up on what's going wrong. And when you got lots of people, you got many employees feeding that ecology. There's a huge diversity, which means one person having a problem will impact the company less on a larger scale, but also that becomes infectious real fast, right?
Yeah.
That can become viral and take the whole company down if you don't pay attention to it. And
Well,
so,
sometimes you have to call somebody in, and because one of the things I put in place real early on was no practical jokes, because it plays right, if you will, to sarcasm,
yeah,
because it becomes a one-upsmanship. Like sarcasm. You did this to me, and I'm gonna just lay in wait and find the time to zing you.
the
And
joke. Yeah.
they always and it got punctuated in my company one day, and I had to take a new employee aside and tell him, "Don't ever play that game again." One of
Mhm.
my other employees got in, and he had a phone message, and he
Yeah.
calls, and he didn't quite hear who answered, and he said, "Hi, I'm returning a call from Myra Maines." Okay, this said
Yeah.
MYRA, Myra Maines, MAINS, and the woman on the other end of the phone says, "Do you have any idea who you just called?" No, ma'am. I have a phone message here to call Myra Maines. She goes, "You called a funeral home."
And so it's like your point is like, the one-upsmanship is only going to get to a point to where
It's going to get
it's hurting
worse.
culture, or someone can physically end up getting hurt, right? Because then the joke is, unfold the chair, and next you're liable if someone breaks their back because they were
Exactly.
just trying to pull a joke.
But I had
Yeah,
to take him aside and say, because the other guy was not happy. Hey,
yeah.
hey, 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 hey. Sorry, I got a dog
The
fight over my
dog
table.
is saving the world right now, Rod.
Oh, he's well, the two of them. There's one bone and two dogs.
Well, it's just, they're doing something. I'm the top dog. I'm just reclaiming my authoritative position.
Well, I think one of them was trying to get him to get a hold of it.
What was
But
the other one? I was trying to, because we were talking about our very first time we did the business mastery event. We had a lot of really young up and coming guys that were there, and couldn't be happier for some of these guys. Um, my neighbor that was down the street, again, a buddy of mine deserves all the credit getting these guys in there. But Brendan Burchard, I met him at Mega Marketing or something. He was doing the golden ticket thing, and his big breakout performance, if you will, that um he said that he alludes to this at his speaking engagements. I don't know. I haven't been to his events. But he said he speaks to that often. Like, when I finally got on Tony Robbins' stage, that was big. He's done very well for himself. There was several people there that have done really good. Onyx got the Learn, LURN, so a platform for a lot of people for uh, e-com space. I mean, just a bunch of uh, young up and coming. Vishan Lakhani, he's got It's kind of like where if you wanted to go take a course on literal like meditation or something, some kind of conscious material, it's all in his platform. Um, yeah, just great people. That event brought together some people. Oh, at that venue, I befriended one of our clients, top underwater photographer on the planet. So he was first a client. Then he did that event as a client, and I coached him in some way, shape, or form to help grow his business. But along the way, with me moving to Maui and doing 5 weeks there, that's where he lived. He and his wife, and then worked with them both. Um, it's great how clients become dear friends, and we hang out. So like I just went, and he's retired since he's 75. He no longer dives. But if you ever go to Maui and you go to their aquarium, like every third picture that's taken in that place of the fish or the aquatic life in some way, shape, or form it'll say Ed Robinson next to it.
That's
So it's
neat.
a great honor. Like I got a ton of awesome pictures. I've yet to do a social media post just to thank him, because he's like, hey man, he's working like 4 days a week kind of thing just to keep himself in the water, because that's where he loves to be. He's not diving, he's doing snorkel tours. And I brought a gaggle of kids, my kids, but my daughter brought one of her friends because it's her 16th birthday. And he's like, hey, let me take you out on a tour. And he just knows the right spot at that time of the year where the
Isn't that
water's going
neat?
to be clear. Oh, what a great experience. Clients become your friends, and they're the best in the world at a thing. And he's the best underwater photographer on the planet. So I get spoiled. I get to post on social media like the best underwater pictures you could ever get.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was just thinking though about what you're doing now, kind of getting this sorted out with your, for lack of a better word, I'll say your collective. Because obviously, I hold you in, I'd say pretty high regard. Don't
Thank
get a
you.
big
Yeah.
head, okay?
Yeah.
And so when I saw when you communicated with me, we got the email link straightened out. So I got the emails. It was a no-brainer to sign up with you. And I just thought just now, you could almost with the materials you've done and the people you've worked with, and I just don't know how you promote it and get people to sign up and just be part of your, for lack of a better word, your
We call it a
coaching
community.
venue.
This is what I'm
Yeah,
calling
the
it.
community.
Probably you could probably have a million different names for it, but
But a lot of this, there were, and I would imagine you've stayed in touch with a lot of them. But just like you and I were talking about Tony Shea
mhm,
and about the Stephen Covey.
mhm.
Um, to me, it's interesting. Where are these guys now? And our conversation today has kind of gone down some of that too.
Yeah.
Of what were the key points they've made that you've gleaned, or maybe you helped them make them? Because in a lot of these cases, these were people you were coaching with their business, correct?
Well, yeah.
And
I mean, well,
yeah,
I've got a big team. At that time we did that event, I think we had 100 coaches, and
yeah,
then as the trainer, so to bring strategic insight, I had consultants that did it on site. We had about 30 or so. We had about 5 core trainers. So I was one of 5 that would do that kind of strategic insight for them. So I touched a fair amount. We've had a total of 250,000 clients. I've had 25,000 of them. So I worked with 10% of them.
yeah. Well, and that's part of what I'm saying is that in building your community now, with some of those people, I mean, I would love to see you in a conversation with Covey or in a
Well, that's a
conversation
classic
with,
podcast model. And I think that's what people really do want, is some degree of infotainment,
yeah,
entertainment around their great content. And the business breakthrough community, I want to make sure that we can not turn into a place to where I'm idolizing Stephen M. R. Covey. I want to idolize our entrepreneurs, our business owners that are committed to mastering their business. And I want to bring in these subject matter experts to help facilitate that. But I don't want to come out of the gate with me just interviewing them, propping them up so they can sell their
yeah,
book. That's already been there, done that. That's been in existence for a while. And that's a consumptive model. I very much am excited about creating an environment where it can move from a guru's monologue to a thought leader's dialogue. So I'm open to having Stephen M. R. Covey, and we'll do the interviews, but I love it to where I can have my inner circle member of business owners in the business breakthrough community be able to ask their questions to Stephen M. R. Covey. Like, not the propped up convenient questions I'm going to ask so he can sell his next book. It's not that I'm against them selling their book. It's just I just want to have a more honest conversation about what's really happening in the front lines of capitalism today, so we can talk about real and relevant issues. So that's a distinction from a standard podcast to this environment I'm looking to create. And if we do this right, I think this could take off. Now, again, you just never know what the market wants. Just because it's a good idea doesn't mean the market wants it.
Well,
Right?
sometimes you're right too soon too.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks
Well,
ago,
me and
though.
webinars, right? I was
Yeah.
at the World's on Zoom in 2002. I was just like, I had a guy in his garage in Canada with a server. And we were taking images of each slide. So every time I clicked next, I took a single image and I cached 26 images in advance. So it can go over 28.8 kilobyte per second modems, and then their cache can hold the image of the next time I click next, it pulled up that next image. And so it was always caching 26 next images, so I can click next, next, next. And no matter where they're at around the world, it looked like we're streaming. When we weren't streaming, we're just jamming images, still JPEGs.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah. Now the world's just got us, Zoom, no problem. Camera, stream, easy. Everyone's got 800 megabytes per second download. Heck, I had 200 megabytes per second download in the middle of a desert, 50 miles away from another human being in the
You
middle
were
of
telling
Oregon,
us that with your son.
because my son hit my buddy up to keep the Starlink. It's an Elon Musk thing.
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was like, all right, let me see his speeds. I think the slowest we ever got down to was like 100 megabytes per second. Something crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Comcast is lucky to get 10 right now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
again,
Well,
I'm not going to post that one. I said them by name. I don't want to get sued by Comcast
yeah. You don't.
for speaking out of turn.
Well, what I was going to point out, like 2 weeks ago, because you and Nate have done so much work together,
Yeah.
and you guys were going back and forth, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, the experience. And
Yeah.
really, there were, because that was one where I think it was kind of up in the air, where you hadn't, I don't know if it was because we're heading into Thanksgiving, because there are only a few of us on there.
Yeah.
And it's like, golly, more people need to hear this conversation between you and Nate,
Yeah.
because you guys had history, and I thought
Well,
it was interesting.
he's a great client. Has done very well. Very, like what are all the books? I forgot what the book was that quoted if you want to create a massive change across, if you want to make some kind of change, like I want to change global commerce the way we know it. I want to help people understand what free enterprise means versus their limited perspective of capitalism, because they usually think of, monopoly-based capitalism, which does not serve the greater good. But they'll just hear free enterprise and chunk it into, oh, it's that thing. I'm like, huh. The two greatest things we've learned in the last 100 years is fascism does not work and socialism does not work. So don't race towards either one of those. Find the thing, and that's that free enterprise. So if you're going to want to do that, you need to have a dream 1,000. Like 1,000 people that are like you. Now, Onyx, recently I connected with him because he invited me to one of his events, but I was in Maui, so I didn't go. He was making a case that you need only 100. He goes, things have changed, certain centers of influence become, and their voice can be even louder. He's making a case for 100. I don't know if I agree with him yet, because maybe he's saying you only need 100 if you want to have a very nice life and be a very wealthy human being. But it doesn't mean, he's a Z-level celebrity at best. No one knows who he is,
Now,
and he hasn't
who
changed the
is
world.
this guy?
Exactly. Whereas when you're changed the world in a sizable way, you've had 1,000 clients that can vouch for you. 1,000 clients that are like, yeah, they're brilliant. You got to go do this. The other language is raving fans. Because if you can
Yeah.
have enough, you've done enough, like Nate Kievman's, where I've worked with him so long and have done such a great job and had a profound impact. He's making a case you only need 100. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to continue giving it some thought, because I'd love to be able to only have to have 100 of those to change global commerce. But I'm glad that you're part of one of my 100. I find it
Well, I am too.
I'm gratifying to be able to have dialogues. It's my commitment is to bring this community to the rest of the world, because I wanted to offer something free for this. Ironically, I paid 40 grand of money I couldn't afford to get Jay Abraham's help. That's how I met Chet Holmes. So, but I don't know why I feel so motivated to want to make it free to next to free, because I didn't do free to next to free. 40 grand was enough. It hurt enough that I followed through and I took action and I implemented. But because of where we're going in these tough times, genuinely, like, you've heard me share this enough. Like, some people think I'm like a doomsdayer. I'm like, no, I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm just, you'd have to be dead, dumb, deaf, and blind not to be able to recognize patterns that happen economically when you look at a macro level of where we're at, and what's going to happen to the USD, and get really honest. Like, you've got to be prepared. This is not a season like you heard. We were talking about Business Mastery's first event. Tony tried to explain the seasons. This is not just a season thing. This is a meta cycle thing. This is a major cycle coming to an end. So I think of it more like the Great Depression, Rod. Like Great Depression, they say, it depends on who you ask. So say we recovered in 10 years. We were on our feet strong within 20, but we were back where we started off in 30. Where what everyone's thinking though, Rod, is 2007, and that was in and out, right? Short cycle. We're thinking of .com dot bust, in out, just a season, like a simple cycle. This is going to be a potentially a different cycle. Again, I don't know how it's going to go. More often than not, historically, again, citing Ray Dalio, it usually ends in wars. And the outcome of that war dictates who those winners and losers are. And none of us can have a crystal ball to know if we're going to go down that rabbit hole or not. But I'm here to just serve the entrepreneurs that I feel that I attract a lot of conscious entrepreneurs that add value to human beings' lives. And there's going to be a lot of lives in need, and I want to be able to rally around them through these times. That's why I want to make it free to next to free, because anyone can always choose to invest and come into our world as a client.
Yep.
So Business Mastery is my Business Mastery transformation is something you've gone through a couple times, but the Business Breakthrough community is just something I want to make as free to next to free, just so they can get in regardless of where they're at and hear these great conversations with great leaders. So appreciate you being one of the first to accept that seat and being here consistently, even when I don't send reminders out and not do it every single week. You're here. So I just thank you for being here. Let me chat with you about our first Business Mastery. We called it the Business Mastery, the Ultimate Business Mastery Summit. I had to look at it because we ended up calling it the Ultimate Business Mastery System when we sold it as DVDs.
Hey, and I bought the DVDs and I closed the doors between Christmas and New Year.
Went through them
and took all my employees through it.
That's so great. It's the best. My emails that go out to this day cite that, like the good, better, best. And in the best, I tell that, similar story. Like, if you want to do this, the best, act like it's a seminar, lock your team in a room over a long weekend and just
we picked
work on it.
Well, it's pretty dead between Christmas and New Year's.
Well, it's a great time, Some will, but most won't, right? Let's just get honest. Most won't. But we attract the most rare. The best are always trying to get better, and that's the people I love to work with. Those that are committed to mastery level skill, they're usually our fans. They're the ones that get the most out of what we do. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to post some of these. I think it was great for us talking about shouting out some great big names and people that are at that venue for the very first time. Maybe give me a reason to reach out to them, see what they're doing, and do exactly what you suggested. Let's go find out, where they're at, see who's alive, who's not, and see who's willing to join be in the business breakthrough community, just so they can hear me and that other person going toe to toe on maybe something we totally disagree with, or something we have great intimate knowledge about, to add value for the rest of our entrepreneur community.
Cool.
Appreciate
Hey,
it, brother.
God willing, I see you next week.
Next week, man. Peace out.
Take
Later.
care. Bye.
Bye.